Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. This is September's webinar for our continuous monthly series that we do with Mozy. Today we'll be looking at the Mozy Mac client. Today's session, like all of our other sessions, will contain a brief presentation by myself, by PowerPoint, and I will do a quick walkthrough of what we're talking about and what we're looking at in the slide deck, and then leave this open to some questions at the end for yourselves. If you do have any questions, please just do pop them into the questions box in the bottom right hand corner of your screen. So a brief introduction of myself for anybody who hasn't attended one of our webinars before. My own name is Niall Fahy. I am the Technical Education Coordinator here for Mozy. So what that means is that I do all the internal and external training for the Mozy support teams. So I do all of our internal training here for our support teams on our software, troubleshooting our software and so on. And I also do that training as well for some of our external partners. I'm with Mozy now about 4.5 years, and I've been doing this job for the last 2.5, which before that I came from a technical support background. So today we're going to look at the Mac client. As I mentioned, we'll do a quick PowerPoint here on the Mac client. It is a very different bit of software compared to the Windows software. We'll then look at the Mac preference window, the options in there and what makes it tick. We'll go through the file selection and then a walkthrough at the end just to show you everything we've been talking about during the actual webinar. Okay. So the Mac client, it's a different, obviously, as I say a while ago, it's a different software. It's a different animal compared to the actual Windows software. It operates quite differently, but the premise behind it is the exact same as it is for the Windows. That we back up, you select your files and we run backups in the background, and we send your data to our servers to keep it safe. So the premise behind it is the same, but the actual process of that backup is slightly different. And that's just the same way that a Windows operating system is slightly different to a Mac operating system. But the premise is the same. Okay. So first one we're looking at there, that there's different client versions for different operating systems. What that means is that when you're installing the software, it will do a quick check. So when you install the Mozy software, it will do as the first step in the installation, it will do a quick check to see if your operating system will match the version of the Mozy software. And that's just down to slight differences between the different operating systems and the slight differences we then have to make an adjustment to our coding process. Okay, so anybody who's familiar with Mac operating systems, or even using iPhones and stuff like that, they'll know that even certain changes to the operating system can make backward compatibility a hard thing to do. So it's the same here. What we do is that we have different versions, and it will tell you when installing if your current version of your operating system will actually be able to support the current version of Mozy. The Mac operating system cannot back up open files. Okay, so the Mac operating system doesn't have a system like VSS, so volume shadow copy service in Windows is used for backing up open files. So on the Windows operating system and the Microsoft Windows operating system, it uses the program VSS to back up open files. So if you have your PowerPoint document open, or your Word document, or any other documents on your machine opened on a Windows machine, when your backup kicks off, a snapshot is taken of those and the file is still backed up even though it's opened when the backup is running. On Mac, however, the Mac operating system doesn't have a software or a service built into the operating system that allows for backing up open files. Therefore, in that scenario, if you do have a file that is opened during the backup, or where the backup kicks off, it does actually skip the file. So it doesn't back it up, and what it does is it pushes that file to the pending list, what's known as the pending list. And if you if you go to the Mac icon in the system tray on the system preferences bar on a Mac, you will see when you drop down the tab there on the Mozy icon, you will see a pending list. That pending list basically is files that are to be backed up in the next backup. So a common frequent one we see for our customers is that they will run a backup, and then they will open their preferences window and they will see this list of pending files. And a backup has just this instant run, and they may have 1 or 2 files in the pending list. And as I said, that is just down to the fact that they were either opened or changed during the backup. Okay, so because Mac doesn't have this ability to back up open files, we're not able to offer the ability to back up open files. Therefore, these files get pushed to the pending list and they're backed up in the next backup. Okay. On Mac, we use Finder for scanning the file system. So in the Windows operating system, we actually have our own filter system that actually monitors the files for changes and any additions to the locations that we're searching in for your backup. On Mac, we tap into Finder. Okay, so we tap into Finder, and Finder is the file scanning on a Mac operating system. The advantages for that is that if you have an external drive or a network share actually mounted in Finder, then it would also be mounted within the Mozy client. So if you open up the Mozy client, it'll already be there, and you don't have to go through the additional options of adding the network share like you do in Windows. So for anybody familiar with the Windows client, when you actually want to add a network share, you have to open up, even if the network share is added to your physical machine, you still have to open up the Mozy client and actually add it there as well. But in the Mac client, because it's picked up, because you're mounting it in Finder, and we tap into Finder for our file scanning, then when you open the Mozy client, you will see the external network share there as well. Okay, so just moving on briefly, the preference window. So the preference window is the equivalent of the settings window in the Windows client. You will have 4 tabs in here. These 4 tabs are the summary tab, files and folders, and the options and performance tabs. Okay, so the summary window, from here you will see the information related to the user's previous backups. You will see information relating to how many files are selected, how many files were backed up in the last backup, when the next backup is. You will also see the user's username and the license key for their actual backup software. You will see the ability you will have from the preference summary window. You will have the ability to do a restore. You will have the ability to look at the history tab, and you will also have the ability to uninstall the software from the Mozy preference window. Okay. The files and folders tab, obviously that's where you will go for your file selection, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail in a second, and I will point out the various options in there when we're going through the walkthrough as well. But it's the basic area where we actually go to select what we want to actually back up. The options tab, okay, so here we will actually look at the general options for the Mac backup client and also the scheduling options. So the thing you will notice immediately from anybody who is using the Mac client, and when we go into the walkthrough in a second, you will see that there is a lot less options in the Mac client as opposed to the Windows client. So there's a lot of additional options and things you can do within the Windows client that are just not available in the Mac client. The performance tab is the last tab when you open up the preference window, and the performance tab does exactly as it says. It looks after bandwidth throttling, and also it looks after your network filter. And this network filter is just basically blacklisting particular networks if you don't want to back up over them. So this often happens whereby, you know, a user may have, for example, if they were a traveling salesman, or if they were out on the road a lot, and they may be using a Wi-Fi dongle from their telecoms provider, and they're paying per gigabyte of data. So to ensure that no backups kick off over that particular network, then it can be blacklisted. Okay. In terms of bandwidth throttling, it's similar to the Windows client. You know, you set the speed and the days and the times that you want actually to throttle the bandwidth of that user. Okay. So the files and folders, as I was saying a while ago, we'll have a look more detail on it. So in the files and folders tab, you will notice that unlike the Windows client, we don't have a separate tab for the backup sets, mainly because there are no backup sets in the Mac client. The files and folders is our default selector. Okay, within there you will see that you will have the ability to select the files and folders that you want to back up. It's indicated by inside in the files and folders tab. If you select an entire folder, you will get a green gem next to it to highlight that everything within this folder is selected. If you only select a few files within a folder, then that folder will get an orange or yellow gem to show that there's only certain files and folders selected within it. Okay, so it's more of a individualistic approach to file selection in the Mac client, as we've no backup sets. However, in the advanced view on the Mac, we have the ability to create rules. These rules are similar to backup sets that we have in the Windows client, but they're slightly different. Okay, they are, however, a lot easier to use because they fall into two categories: either backup or don't backup. Okay, so the two sections they have is either backup or don't backup in the rules, and I'll show you how you go about creating those rules when we're going through the walkthrough in a moment. Okay, and then the network drives, as I mentioned a while ago, if a network drive is mounted in Finder, then it will also appear automatically inside in the Mozy Mac client. Okay, so we'll move into the demonstration now. I will just push this down. And here we have the Mozy client. Okay, so I pull it down from here, I right click on the Mozy icon here, and I opened my preferences. Okay, so this is my preferences window. As I said, I have backup now. I can kick a backup off now. I can restore files. I can open my history tab. Here will give me information on my next backup, when my last backup was, file selection, and so on. Total space used of how much space. I can uninstall the client from here, and I can check if I'm running the most up-to-date version from here. Okay, so moving into the files and folders tab, here is how I will select my files and folders for backup. Okay, I have my list of files here. If I click down here, I can select to backup or don't backup a particular desktop, or the desktop if I wish. If I wish, I can backup or don't backup documents and so on. So for instance, if I didn't want to backup music, I can select my music, and once that's scanned, I can remove it. If I want pictures, backup pictures, don't backup pictures, I can select not to backup pictures. And so on. So as I said a while ago, you can select, once you select a folder in its entirety, you can, as I did there when I selected music, you can see that I actually have now the ability, it's backing up the entire, I get this green gem because it's backing up everything within the folder. Okay, not that there's anything in the folder currently. But that's your files and folders selection, where you can make your selections for your files and your folders if you wish. Okay. Your advanced view then is where the rules come in. So this is similar to your backup set tab in the Windows client. So you have, as you can see here, backup and don't backup. Okay, so if I put something into the backup section, it's going to back it up, obviously. If I put something into the don't backup section, it's not going to back it up. Okay, so if I want to create additions in here myself, I can do it by file or folder. I can select a file or folder that I want to back up in particular. If I want to do it, I can do it by suggested file and folder. So these are some ones that are suggested by Mozy. Okay, you can back some of those up if you wish, or alternatively, I can go in and create my own rules by advanced. Give the rule a name, backup files within a certain location, and then you will actually you will create the rules here. Okay, so file extension name, parent folder, file size, so on. You can create them there, and they will all go into the backup section. If I don't want to back something up in particular, I can do by file and folder here. I can select the file and folder from here and what that will do then is it will stop any backups occurring from that location. So for example, if I went in here and select this file, add it in there, this file then will not be backed up. Okay, so that's just the advanced features within the files and folders, and they are the rules that you can create from the advanced section, and they work similar to the way backup sets work in the Windows client, except it's a bit more straightforward in that it's backup and don't backup. Okay. If we go into the options tab here, as I said a while ago, we have a bit more detail, or we have a bit less detail than we do on the Windows client. As you can see, very limited general tab here. I can install updates automatically, use custom location for temporary files, or show the Mozy status in the menu bar. Okay, if I untick that, you'll notice it's gone from the menu bar up here. If I select it again, it comes back. Okay, they're the general options. A lot less options there in the general tab than you would see in the Windows client tab. If anybody's familiar with the Windows client tab, they would know that there's about 4 or 5 additional tabs within the Windows client to actually make adjustments to the way the software works. From here, we can access our scheduling. Okay, so we can enable our scheduling. If we want to suspend it, we can suspend it here. We have a drop down for how long we want to suspend it for. We can select if we want to back up automatically or back up on a schedule. If we select schedule, then we can select every day, every other day, or every week. If you select every week, it'll ask you to select the day that you want to run it, and the same for every other week. Okay, so again, much more limited compared to the Windows client. Even there on the scheduling options, the automatic parameters are automatically set. They're not something that are adjustable by our users. Performance then, okay, we can limit the backup speed. You can, similar to the Windows client, you can toggle it. Difference here is you can the very limit. If you go all the way to the left in the Mac client, is that it still stays at 32 kilobytes per second. On the Windows client, that can go to never back up at all. You can limit the bandwidth, okay, between certain hours and certain days if you wish. Okay, so that allows you to, with the most common being, limiting the bandwidth speed between 9 and 5 Monday to Friday, the general most common office hours. Network filter here allows you to select which filter you do not want to run a backup over by adding it to the blacklist. In that instance, it just won't run a backup over that particular network, and it will look for a different network to run a backup over if one is available. If one's not, then it just won't run a backup, full stop. So that's the Mozy Mac client. For any questions, I'll leave the session open to it now. As I say, you can pop questions into the question box below, and I'll leave the session open for a few minutes just to see if there are any questions out there. In that time, thanks everybody for joining today. It's much appreciated for take your time to join us. I will be sending out the recording to everybody who has registered, and we will look forward to seeing you all again next month for our October webinar.